Welcome to the webinar, everybody. Today we're talking about trends in learning technology. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Jake White. I am the CEO and founder of Prometheus Development. We provide Torch learning management system. It's an efficient, affordable, powerful learning management system primarily geared toward your small to mid-sized companies. If you'd like to participate and kind of get a discussion going on Facebook or Twitter, you can visit torchlms.com/live and participate and ask questions, comments. We'll keep an eye on that even after the webinar, and we'll respond to your questions. You can also participate through Twitter with the hashtag TorchLMSLive. So hope you'll participate there. Okay, so let's talk about trends in learning technology. We're going to hit 4 major trends, and we'll wrap up with a couple of other important trends that are going on with learning technology. First is cloud solutions or software as a service trends that are occurring, and there's some really fascinating things happening there. They're relevant for learning and development professionals and business in general. Second trend we'll talk about is social learning. Then we'll get into the new standard of the new SCORM standard for e-learning, or next generation SCORM, sometimes called the Tin Can API or the Experience API, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to discuss mobile learning, and then we'll wrap up with a couple of other trends. And I want to be clear that when we talk about trends, we're not talking about fads. These are clear and long-lasting trends that are already disrupting how businesses train and develop their employees. So first question to ask before we address these technology trends is, how does your organization deal with technology? In terms of adoption, is your organization an early adopter? Are you part of the early majority that kind of goes along with most of the competitors as they begin to adopt new technology? Or do you tend to be a little bit late in the game and you want to wait till the bugs are worked out and the risks are much lower and so forth? So I think this is an important question to ask as you analyze and assess whether these particular technologies make sense for your organization. So the first trend we're going to talk about is cloud computing. The CEO of Microsoft said, Microsoft is betting its future on the cloud. This is a huge area. You hear it as a buzzword a lot, but I think a lot of people don't fully understand what it is and how it works and the significance of it. Deloitte Consulting recently wrote in a report that all businesses would be well advised to begin to develop experience with cloud computing platforms at an early stage to better prepare themselves for the disruptions that lie ahead. I think this is a great warning to help us understand, okay, we really need to understand this technology and start to embrace it. Let's define cloud computing. You could define it as access to applications via the internet on multiple devices without having to install or host on your own server or device. So it's accessing applications through the internet rather than installing it on your computer. There are a number of benefits of using cloud computing, sometimes called software as a service. And we've got 5 of those benefits right here. Number 1, your upgrades are always included. It's versionless. So that means every year when a new feature comes out, you don't have to go download the latest and greatest feature. Second, another big benefit is cloud computing is highly scalable. You can get more and more users on there. You can grow it to different locations, and it's going to work exceptionally well as your business continues to grow. And it also means you're going to have lower costs. You're not going to have to go through a huge implementation process with huge capital expenditures in order to get an application like this up and running. Third, your IT department's not going to have to maintain and back up and go through all of the maintenance pieces that are required for these type of solutions. Number 4, rapid deployment. You can usually get it up and running very quickly. And number 5, they're highly secure. A lot of companies get heartburn over having an application that's not behind their firewall on their own servers and their own locations. But if you look at lists of data breaches that occur, most of the data breaches that happen are on-premises type of setups. So AT&T, Amazon, Apple, these huge companies that have huge IT departments, even they have been hacked. Whereas it's much more rare for cloud computing solutions to get hacked. So and those are things you can look up, but you definitely want to make sure you go with a credible solution and credible company that's got a good security profile that they can share with you and documentation. But that security concern that a lot of IT departments have is definitely going away. So what types of cloud computing applications might learning and development professionals use? Well, obviously a learning management system is going to be one they'll use a lot, but there's also talent management systems. There's also authoring tools out there that are software as a service tools. In other words, they're browser based. You can access it through your browser. So there are a number of tools out there that are worth looking at and deciding, does it make sense for us to use this kind of tool, and does it make sense for us to go with a SaaS or cloud type of solution for all of the benefits we've listed here. So let's look at a needs assessment. What would be the drivers that would cause your organization to potentially want to purchase a software as a service type of application? Number 1, limited capital investment funds for software. Well, okay, so if you go with a cloud application, typically you're not going to have huge upfront costs like you would if you were installing it on your own servers on premises. Number 2, limited IT resources. So they're not going to have to maintain the application software and so forth. 3, if you need to deploy quickly, usually you can do that with a SaaS tool. And if you prefer a pay-as-you-go and pay-for-what-you-use type of model, a lot of software as a service applications allow you to just pay for what you use. So there's some real huge benefits there. Okay, we're going to move on to the second trend in learning technology, and that is social learning. I recently attended the Salesforce.com user conference called Dreamforce in San Francisco, and the CEO of Salesforce.com is an incredible guy named Mark Benioff, and he gave a great keynote address on how business is social and how social learning or social media tools are really disrupting business in general. They're really allowing businesses to grow and expand in completely new ways. And he called it a social revolution, and talked about how these social media tools are allowing us to connect with customers, partners, employees, and even products in new ways. And I found, when he talked about connecting products, I found that very interesting, where we're starting to interact with our phones in social ways. If you've got an iPhone and you've got Siri, that's one example of how you're now being social with a product. So I'm going to show a couple of graphs here from Mark Benioff's presentation. And the first one is this graph, which is just amazing to me, that you've got over 150 million conversations going on per day on social media sites like Facebook and Twitter. Social technology has taken off massively and faster than pretty much any other type of product in history. You can see with these graphs that you've got 70% of companies have adopted some kind of social technology of some kind, according to McKinsey. Also, there's high growth and a lot of investment that's going into social media as an IT category. It's an area that's taking off dramatically. So, using social media tools for learning, we call that social learning. Or another way to say that is to use Web 2.0 to learn. Web 2.0, of course, is interaction online. Web 1.0 was just static content that people read. 2.0, now there's interaction happening online. People are uploading their own content onto YouTube. People are writing their own blogs, and they're participating in discussion threads and so forth. So these are all hugely important tools for learning, and they can also be broadly defined as a piece of what's been called informal learning. So you've got formal learning like classroom training, and then you've got informal learning that's more day-to-day conversations that occur, where there's a whole lot of learning that goes on there, and probably a whole lot more that goes on in the informal side of things. So Burson and Associates takes this whole idea of social learning and categorizes these different social learning tools into 4 areas. They call it the 4 C's of social learning. That includes conversations, connections, content, and collaboration. So we'll just spend a couple of minutes going through each of these 4 C's. So we'll start off with conversations. So conversations includes blogs and forums and microblogs. That includes Twitter and other ways of connecting with people and communicating with people. So let me just give a quick example of how I love how blogs and forums can be used in business. Blogs, of course, you can get subject matter experts to put out a blog post once a week or so, and now you've got that information captured. And now if that person moves on to another organization, you've got all that great information captured, and it can be shared, and it's now part of your corporate intelligence and corporate memory, and other people can learn from it, and you haven't lost that value when that person walks out the door. Forums, where there's more interactive type of discussion threads, I think are hugely valuable for both capturing information, but also ensuring that people can get up to speed very quickly. And I'll give an example of that. Let's say your organization has multiple locations, and you've got a location manager at each one of these locations. And they have a discussion forum where they throw out all the difficult questions and difficult problems that they're dealing with, and they discuss that. They share that information so that they can learn from one another. So they're sharing all the best practices that they've found through hard experience and sharing lessons learned and so forth. Well, let's say you just promoted John Doe to be the new store manager in a new area. Well, John Doe can now go to this discussion forum and read through the discussion thread and see all of the challenges and problems and questions that have come up over the space of even years, and they can read through how these other location managers have dealt with those issues over time. And they can very quickly, very rapidly get up to speed on the best practices and lessons learned and all the major issues. And that's something that can't be done in a classroom setting. It's really a powerful way to help people get up to speed very quickly and to get them as productive as possible. So very, very powerful learning tools here. And obviously you can use all of these tools to enhance formal learning as well, where you have a class that afterwards they continue the conversation through a forum or a blog. Second C is content. So you have tools like SharePoint and WordPress and RSS feeds and rating systems that help us to identify content that can be used for development, for personal development or professional development. So using a rating system on content, or tagging content, sharing content. This is going to be this can even include YouTube, uploading a video and having a discussion about it in a discussion thread below, and so forth. This is a huge area that's allowing people to share more information quicker and helping us to search and find information much quicker that's more relevant. The third C of social learning is connections. So you're familiar with tools like Facebook and LinkedIn that would go into this category. There's other tools out there that allow you to create user profiles, so you can actually go in and say, here are the skills that I have, and here's the experiences I've had, and here's the education I have, and so forth. And it allows people to search for others with potentially common interests, or they're looking to recruit someone either externally or internally to their organization who has a certain skill set. Or it might just be, I have a question. It doesn't make sense for me to take a whole class to try to get this question answered. I just need to talk to a subject matter expert, and I need to identify who that subject matter expert is and give them a call and have a conversation. So that's this area of connections. The next area and last is collaboration. So this is the fourth C in the 4 C's of social learning. So collaboration is going to include wikis and workspaces and other repositories where you can have people submit ideas and so forth. So this is a way for people to connect and work together on things. And so in learning and development, of course, you can assign people projects and have them work on things together as kind of a stretch assignment or a way of learning together in a group setting, or simply using wikis and workspaces as a way to find information and then to use that to enhance classroom training. So there are a number of different ways that you can use this collaboration aspect of social learning. And I want to give a couple of examples of how there are tools out there that make use of these technologies. So give you one example. With our own system, Torch Learning Management System, we have a collaboration area that has discussions. So you can start a discussion, you can search for a discussion, you can categorize your discussion, and you can continue to have a discussion thread. And for the discussions that I want to follow, I just click on the little heart and it adds it to my subscriptions. And then I can check the box that says notify me when there's an update, and I'll get an email each time someone adds a post to that particular discussion thread. So it's a great way, a very easy way to find communities of practice or groups of people that are having discussions about common interests that you may have questions on and want to follow, and you can come in here and follow that. Another example, I mentioned this earlier, the whole idea of an expert directory or internal yellow pages to your organization, where you want to be able to find experts in different areas. Well, this is an example from from Torch Learning Management System, where I can come into this expert directory and I can search for a particular skill or competency, click on that skill, and then it gives me a list of all the experts that have that skill, and then I can go and I can see their level, I can see where they're located, and I can contact them. So that's an example of an internal expert directory. So just a couple of examples of how social learning is being used in a learning management system. To wrap up this social learning piece here, I've got a couple of books that I want to recommend. They're excellent on learning more about the value of social learning and how it can be used and harnessed in your organization. So the first book is Wikinomics. It's a great book about collaboration. Another book, Crowdsourcing. And then the book Lost Knowledge is also a great book about capturing the knowledge of the exiting workforce. The big baby boom population, that cohort is going to be leaving the workforce, and they're going to take a lot of great knowledge and expertise with them. How do you capture that? And what's really the threat there? So that's what that book's about. Okay, so why would you want to implement social learning at your organization? Let's look at some of the drivers there. First, if you have many subject matter experts and multiple locations, and you want to be able to capture that would be one huge driver, one reason that you would want to implement some kind of social learning strategy. Second, if knowledge loss is a threat in the coming years, if you've got a more seasoned workforce that is potentially a threat as they start to exit the workforce, and you need to capture that knowledge and expertise, that would be another driver. Third, need to increase communication between units. Well, having a more convenient way to do that outside of a phone call or email, such as discussion forums and other tools that we've discussed, that would be another driver. And then third, if you have a culture that is strategically seeking to harness all your employees' ideas and knowledge and so forth, if you have a little bit more of a sort of democratic culture, these tools would be very powerful and would be a good fit for your organization. Okay, let's move on to the next trend in learning technology, and that is the next generation SCORM. So for those of you that may not understand what SCORM is a technology standard that is used for e-learning, for web-based training. It's been the standard for years, and recently a new standard is being introduced. And let's just look quickly at why does the old standard need to be replaced? What's wrong with it? Well, it's over 10 years old. It was built on an older technology. It's very complex. It only tracks single learners and only tracks within a course. So it's got some limitations. It can't really track Web 2.0 experiences or social learning type of experiences, and it has a number of other limitations. So the Advanced Distributed Learning, which is a government entity, teamed up with another company called Rustisi, and they decided to go find out from the learning community what do we need in this next standard of SCORM that they were starting to develop. So they launched what they called the Project Tin Can, where they went out and got as much feedback and information as they could from the learning and development community, and they got a lot of feedback that helped them develop a very powerful new tool. And what they ended up with is the Tin Can API, or it's recently being called the Experience API. So this new standard, this new e-learning standard, is going to solve a lot of the problems that older specifications suffered from. It's going to join together the SCORM and AICC formats. It's going to add a number of new capabilities that will allow it to handle new content, Web 2.0 type of content. And it's not going to require that content exists inside of a learning management system. You can actually track activities that occur outside of your learning management system. So this is a very powerful thing. So let's talk about what are some of those learning activities that this new standard is going to be able to track. Well, mobile learning, simulations, virtual worlds, gaming, social learning, experiential learning, offline learning, collaborative learning. There's a lot of new activities that need to be tracked. And all of this is based on a very simple tracking logic. And let's just briefly look at that. This new standard, this new SCORM standard, is just simply based on a noun, a verb, and an object. Very simple logic, but it's very powerful and very flexible and allows you to track just about anything you can imagine. So you can see the noun, the I part of it, John Doe or Team A or Instructor A, and then they did this. They watched, they read, they attended, they demonstrated, they blogged, authored, taught, completed, passed, you name it. And what was it? The object is a simulation, a quiz, a document, a game, and so forth. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of how powerful this new standard is. So for more information on the new SCORM standard, the Tin Can API, you can go to adlnet.gov or go to scorm.com, and there's a lot of great information about this very exciting new development. So moving on to the next trend here, mobile learning. Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, said, if you don't have a mobile strategy, you don't have a strategy. This is such a huge and explosive area that virtually all businesses are trying to figure out how they can bring value to their organization with this highly explosive new disruptive technology that is mobile learning, or that is mobile technology. So let's just look quickly. This is kind of an interesting example to look at here. Just the difference between not that many years ago, 1983, you had one of the first cell phones that cost $4,000. It weighed 2 pounds, a whopping 2 pounds, and it was capable of only a few phone calls before losing power. I don't know if some of you had this big brick of a phone, but now you look at today's technology, the iPhone 5 that came out not very long ago, it weighs only 3.9 ounces, cost a couple $100, 8 hours of continuous use battery life, 10 hours of video, 40 hours of audio, and on top of that, something that the old brick could never have existed with the old technology is internet connectivity and an 8 megapixel camera and more than 500,000 apps that allow you to do virtually anything. So this, of course, is very powerful and highly relevant for the field of learning and development. And so you can see here the growth that's taken place. Mobile is actually now 50% of household IT budgets. So households, when they spend money, they're spending half of their technology-related budget on mobile devices. The mobile industry revenue is now 2% of global GDP. That is just massive. And mobile data has been doubling every year since 2006 in the United States. It's absolutely amazing. So you can see in this chart here that smartphones and emerging devices like tablets have massively passed up computers, and just about everybody's got one now. And so how do you connect with people? How do you harness these powerful tools in a way that makes sense for training and developing your people? So, of course, the most obvious aspect of this is distributing e-learning with an LMS to multiple devices. So what you're seeing now is a lot of learning management systems that will allow you to access training content from all your devices. So I can start my training on my iPhone, and I can stop halfway through, and then I can go pick it back up where I left off on my computer and complete the required training I have. So there's a huge convenience factor. It's something that potentially is going to increase compliance with required training, and can be a much more engaging experience as well. So let's look at what are some of the issues about mobile learning that are relevant for learning and development. Number one is the issue of instructional design. Designing web-based training for mobile devices is a little bit different, and it's important to understand the difference there and how it's going to show up for your users and how they're going to experience that content. And so converting existing training over to more mobile-friendly training can take some work. And the other issue is that a lot of the SCORM content, a lot of the web-based training content out there is it displays and is published in Flash, where the iPhone and iPad, you can't view Flash on those devices, and so sometimes there's a content compatibility issue that needs to be fixed by switching it over to HTML5 or some other format. So second issue is accessing your LMS on a mobile device. There's a couple different ways to do that. Some learning management systems, you access the LMS through a browser on your phone or on your tablet. Others have an app where you access your LMS with the app. And there's pros and cons to both of these two approaches. One of the huge benefits to an app-accessed LMS is that it may allow you to have offline access to some training. So you could download a training video on your phone, get on an airplane, watch it while you're on the airplane, take the quiz at the end, and then once you land and you're back online, it syncs the completion data with your learning management system. So some really interesting trends there that I think are really making mobile devices very powerful learning tools. So let's look at a needs assessment here. What are the drivers? What are the reasons that you might want to implement mobile learning at your organization? Well, number one, if you have an employee base that uses mobile devices, there's a broad use of mobile devices, that would be a big driver. And because these tools are so ubiquitous, I think that most organizations fit that. Number two, if you have a mobile workforce, you have a lot of external salespeople, for example, this would be another driver of why you might want to implement a program like this. Number three, you have a tech-savvy workforce that prefers accessing information and, in this case, training from multiple devices. That would be another big driver. Okay, so let's wrap up with just a couple of other important trends that are taking place in learning technology. So the first is virtual worlds and gaming. This really is a really important trend, and there's some really amazing things happening in this area. So if we take virtual worlds, for example, one expert said that mobile is the future of any activity online. This is of course something that tools like Second Life might struggle to penetrate, but many of these virtual worlds are actually hugely popular and are being used by companies like Cisco and IBM for extensive training. In fact, IBM, who's one of the largest landholders within Second Life, which is a popular virtual environment online, IBM maintains 24 islands used extensively for internal purposes, for things like conferences and simulations and other types of training activities. So by 2007, they had actually already invested $11 million in building islands, these private islands where their people can come in and have conferences and interact with each other, and very, very interesting, some of these trends that are taking place. So how are they actually using this? Well, take education as just one example. Well, there's you're sitting in a history class and you're talking about a particular era in history, and now you can send your students into a virtual world that simulates how things were during that particular era, and they can actually have a tangible, very hands-on type of experience with that historical time period. Other organizations, you could do with first responders, you could do a tsunami simulation and show, here's how this tsunami would affect this particular coastal area, and here's how would we respond, and go through that and bring engineers into that picture and look at how it affects this or that, and how you could actually have them go right in there and design aspects of our infrastructure to respond to circumstances like that. So a lot of really powerful ways that is being used and will continue to grow in the coming years. Second piece that I mentioned is gaming. There are over 1 billion gamers in the world. Video games are absolutely huge, and now with the internet, video games are no longer just playing on a Pac-Man machine in an arcade. Now games are so social that people are getting online and they're getting into these very immersive virtual environments, and they're playing with people all over the world, and it's really a fascinating area, and there are huge implications to gaming for learning. And obviously the biggest piece is engagement. People retain things better when they're highly engaged, and when you bring a competitive aspect into the training, with points and badges and leaderboards and using quizzes and other virtual worlds that are very immersive and interactive, that engages your users, and that's going to add tremendous value to how you're going about how you're launching your training programs. So so we talked about virtual worlds and gaming. A couple other things that we'll kind of wrap up with. I mentioned offline access to e-learning previously. That's another important trend. Authoring tools out there, a lot of them are starting to provide easy access to stock photos and other content that just simply makes it easier to author e-learning. And then another area is this area of business intelligence, where you have rich graphical representations of data that have analytics that can forecast and show you a good snapshot of what's going on in your business. Well, some of those ideas and technologies are bleeding over into learning technology, where you can have extensive graphical representations of what's going on in terms of compliance and training and other development activities in your organization, and you can see that and make decisions based on that. So what's next in learning technology? Well, is it going to be the Google Glasses project? Are you going to take training there? Will it have GPS and it'll track all of your activities that you're doing on a daily basis? Who knows? There's that's still to be determined what's next on the docket for learning technology, but there's certainly some really exciting things, and with as many new technologies are being developed, without question, there will continue to be applications for learning technology and new and exciting ways of implementing these technologies into your learning and development programs. So we appreciate everybody attending the webinar today. I hope you'll continue to follow the conversation on Twitter and Facebook, and I hope you'll come visit us at torchlms.com. Thanks so much, and good luck.